Mount Everest is actually taller than we thought, proving that you learn something new every day in 2020, and today is no exception. We're learning something new on the pandemic, on the economy, on legal challenges to the US election of 2020. So I just want to jump on and give you a couple headlines and a few things to think about. First thing to note is that today is a history-making day. It is the launch of the largest ever vaccine distribution campaign in the history of the UK. The vaccine that's being distributed is this Pfizer-COVID-19 vaccine that we've talked a lot about. And this is the first time this vaccine has been administered to anyone outside of a study anywhere on the planet. So really notable for a few different reasons. This is the same vaccine that the FDA is considering granting emergency use authorization to. And we know that FDA advisory panel is meeting on Thursday to give their recommendation about whether or not the FDA should do so. Ahead of that, we have a look at some interesting new data that we really haven't seen before. This is data based on the Pfizer vaccine study, and it's some analysis of the data. So it's about 50 pages long. First few takeaways that I'm seeing so far is that the analysis is suggesting this vaccine will hopefully prevent you from getting COVID-19. If you do get COVID-19, it will hopefully aid you in getting a less severe case. There are some limitations to the data. 38,000 participants, they're being watched after their second dose for safety. That period that they're being watched in a follow-up period right now is a median of about 2 months. So about 60 days. Remember, this trial is ongoing. More data will be collected, but the data that's being looked at right now is for that particular period. We're also learning more about the participants. I know you've had a lot of questions about that. Ages, pre-existing conditions. So I'll link to this report. I'm going to try to bullet point a couple things for you too, so you can see for yourself what the FDA is also looking at. Remember, this is for emergency use authorization. It's different than an all-out approval. But the stakes are very high. We know the backdrop to all of this is that we're seeing COVID-19 deaths rise to the same level we saw back in April, and that was the highest levels we've seen in America. So there are some that believe distributing a vaccine like this now will help prevent future deaths. This is the first of many vaccines that the FDA expects to look at for emergency use authorization. So the US government's working with the FDA on the FDA side. On the health and medical side, science side, we're also seeing Congress try to step into a question about how to help during this pandemic as well. Congress has a long list of things that they have to do before the holidays. They have to fund the government. They have to pass a defense funding bill. They're trying to figure out a COVID-19 stimulus package. The government runs out of money by the end of the week. There's no spending bill. If there's no spending bill, the government could shut down. Those are the stakes. What it looks like right now is that lawmakers are going to fund the government through next week, try to negotiate further to get a spending bill together and kind of get everything organized, including a COVID-19 stimulus package. It looks like there's an agreement on the number amount. There's a question about whether or not stimulus checks would go directly to the American people. So remember that Congress has a lot to do before the end of the year because a new Congress comes in January. There's really no waiting. And so one of the things that we're really closely watching is what's happening in the state of Georgia. There's a Senate runoff there for 2 Senate seats. Whoever wins those 2 Senate seats, whichever party, could hold the majority in the U.S. Senate. And that's really important because there's a high stakes game here as well. If you have a Democrat in the White House and Democrats with the majority in the Senate, Democrats with the majority in the House, then you have a trifecta. And the thinking would be that that would make it easier to pass things like a stimulus bill with less negotiations. So that's why what's going on in Georgia is getting so much attention, why these Senate seats really matter. Of course, if Republicans hold the majority in the Senate, then there's another different dynamic in play. So we're very much a part of a developing story here about the political makeup in America. The state of Texas actually sued the state of Georgia and the state of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan today. What Texas is alleging is that these states changed their election laws before the election of 2020 illegally, and they're appealing directly to the Supreme Court to see if the Supreme Court will weigh in on this lawsuit. We don't know yet if the Supreme Court will, but we did learn today that the Supreme Court will not look at a case from Pennsylvania. There's all sorts of legal challenges in the state of Pennsylvania, a lot of them having to do with the mail-in voting. So Pennsylvania expanded mail-in voting going into 2020 and extended the deadlines for when votes would be accepted. And there was all sorts of challenges to this inside the state, and the courts have upheld that this could take place. Well, one Republican took and petitioned his case to the Supreme Court, wanting the Supreme Court to get involved. And the Supreme Court today said, no, they won't. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is a pattern that we're seeing, that legal challenges around 2020 so far have stopped in the courts. that we haven't seen them proceed. If they haven't been dismissed, there's been a request for more information. What happened today with the Supreme Court saying, we're not taking up that case, is a good example of some of the things that we've seen in the past, albeit in lower court. So this is why I mention it. Again, we'll see what happens with the Supreme Court if they take up the Texas lawsuit. Early analysis is suggesting that's unlikely, but we don't know. We don't know, and it's important to leave room for all possibilities. We have to be flexible in order to be responsible journalists. I want to make sure that we do that. We're getting a good reminder about developing stories with this story on Mount Everest. Who knew there was a dispute about how tall Mount Everest is? Big headline is, it's still really, really tall and very difficult to climb. But Nepal and China had different measurements for its height, and they've come together. They found common ground. And Mount Everest is slightly taller than anyone previously had measured. So that's just something to walk away with today. Again, I'll put more information on that on our website. So you see, even stories that we think are over are still developing. And that's a good lesson for us. I'm thinking back to my college days, back in prehistoric times. I was in a geology class where the teacher said that plate tectonics are moving at a rate that our fingernails grow. And so it's a reminder that even when we're standing still, we're in motion. And I like that. I like that little analogy for us during this time in 2020 when so many different stories are still developing and we can't tell the end of the story now. We've just got to hang in there. So thanks for hanging in with us. Questions, comments, let me know. And as always, more on smarternews.com.